During the past 6 years, an impressive, groundbreaking force in metal and hard rock has emerged out of Los Angeles, California. In that time, O'Clown, friends as well as bandmates Serj Tankian, Shavo Odadjian, John Dalmayan and Darren Malakian have made a swift transition from novice LA Underground heroes to international nu metal stars. Seemingly appearing out of thin air, but having sweated and toiled for their success, System of a Down exploded onto the music scene in 1996 and have not looked back since. Uncompromising, innovative, single-minded and blessed with a genius instinct for fusing the best of metal, rock and Middle Eastern music, this remarkable group are perhaps the most original metal band of recent years. Together, System of a Down make a huge skull-pounding noise that combines many styles and sounds, from the obvious to the esoteric, dragging heavy music into a fusion of exciting new possibilities. System's roots can be traced back to LA, where the four members all grew up and spent their formative years. Lead vocalist Serj Tankian was actually born in the Lebanon and moved with his family to LA at an early age. His father was a musician and encouraged Serj to play and sing for himself from an early age. Drummer John Dalmayan was also born in the Lebanon but moved to Los Angeles via Toronto. Meanwhile, bassist Shavo Odadjian and guitarist Darren Malakian were born in Armenia and Glendale, California, respectively, the former relocating to LA while still very young. Serj, Darren and Shavo all attended the same Armenian private elementary school in Hollywood, in sight of the famous sign. Serj had already graduated from high school when the others were still in the 4th grade. Their experiences at this school were far from idyllic and left many an imprint on their emotional development. Darren once revealed that he still suffers from nightmares relating to his experiences there, such was its level of oppression. Teachers allegedly warned him that pupils would be locked in a dark room full of rats if they misbehaved or cried for their mothers. Unsurprisingly, he's associated the school with all things malevolent and evil and has used it as an explanation for his twisted personality and take on life. John did not attend the same school as the others, but endured similar experiences at another Armenian school, eventually getting expelled from it. System of a Down was formed in early 1995 when the LA group Soil, featuring Serj and Darren, disbanded in disarray. Serj and Darren, however, refused to be swayed from music making and immediately decided to form a new group. Within a matter of months, old school friend Shavo was recruited, followed by John soon after. The band came together through mutual friends and acquaintances, and each member's Armenian heritage was purely coincidental. Shavo explains more about it.
Well, we formed in Los Angeles. We all met at a rehearsal studio. The three of us knew each other from before, but we weren't really friends or anything, but we all went to the same elementary school. Ironic. But then we all met up at some studio. I was playing with another band, Darren was playing with another band, and Serj was playing with another band. Well, we changed that band completely, and now we have System. That's how we met, and that's how it all started in a studio.
Darren coined the group's name from a poem that he had written called Victims of the Down. Chavo objected to the word victims for its narrow personal connotation, so Darren came up with the broader, ambiguous system, which suited everybody and left room for thought and subjective interpretation. System of a Down were born. One of the key factors that helped System of a Down in their early years was the rise of street teams and their use in spreading the word on up-and-coming bands. Remember, this was 1995, a few years before the internet really became a viable force for the underground distribution of bands and their music. It's become relatively easy these days for new groups to set up websites and contact directly a loyal and supportive fan base. Back in the mid-90s, all this work had to be done by hand and foot, and so a new development in music culture, the street team, emerged as a vital force in shaping the music now enjoyed today. It took the emerging new metal scene of the mid-90s to motivate a new generation of rock fans, passionate about their music and willing to help out in any way they could. One of the earliest street team members was Vi, who had known the members of the band from an early age.
Well, I first met the guys, my brother had given me their demo back in '95. He used to play basketball with Serge and some of the other guys at a local junior high. And I heard the demo and I was like, I didn't know. I couldn't believe he knew these guys, first of all, and it was like new at the time. I didn't know what to think of it, you know. I was kind of scared from it, but I just started going to shows and through other acquaintances just met the guys, and I knew friends that were going to their school, their previous Armenian school. And it was just like a big little circle of knowing this person and that person. And I eventually was cool with them.
New bands like System would recruit loyal followers into a regimented, almost army-like set of factions. These fans would hit the streets running, gathering outside gigs and clubs, distributing flyers, stickers, free demo tapes, in fact anything that would get a new band noticed. In some cases, entire networks spread across the US, with street team captains from different cities recruiting loyal fans into the organisation. These passionate and loyal street teams, or beanies as they were known in LA, would then be rewarded for all their hard efforts by getting exclusive access to the band, strictly limited tapes, information packs and invitations to one-off gigs. This was not some half-assed amateur stunt cobbled together on a whim, but a very professional, highly organised long-term operation. System of a Down were one of the key pioneers of this new force, and with the strength of a powerful ethnic fan base behind them, they threw everything they had at it. Local radio DJ Striker, from the influential rock station K-Rock, has seen firsthand the rise of the street team and the massive effect they've had on music.
People that are from LA or live in LA now, if they stumble onto a band by accident, even if they're unsigned, I mean, they will do what it takes for this band to get big. I mean, you can go in front of any club that has bands play, and you leave, and there are 12 different kids out there with flyers to come see a band.
And we're just hitting the streets all the time with their little ghetto stickers and flyers, and everyone was like, what the hell is that name, System of a Down, you know? And it sounded like a cool name because it was kind of controversial, but no one knew what the hell it was anyway, so.
In the last few years, access to new music has changed radically and remains one of, if not the greatest development of the new digital internet age. It seems almost laughable now in our CD copying, MP3 world that only a few years ago, the humble cassette tape provided the only economic solution for cheap distribution of new music. It was Darren and Serge's brush with the music business in their previous band, Soil, that reinforced the importance of well-recorded, eye-catchingly designed cassette tapes. These were no mere demo tapes, but carefully crafted, well-packaged mini-albums that the early System of a Down spent much time and money getting recorded, using the best facilities that they could afford at the time. The next step was to approach record stores in the area, trying to get them to distribute the tapes. One of the key players in this scene is Backside Records, located in downtown Burbank. Record store owner Jojo was, and still is, a key player in establishing distribution bases for new bands and their music. A real expert on the LA underground rock scene, Jojo and Backside Records were a natural target for Systems Energies. It continues to play a pivotal role with its similar homegrown success story, Linkin Park, who also based their initial assault on the music world from Backside Records.
When we first got approached from actually Shavo, from the bassist from System of a Down, brought us his demo, I would say in '95. That was the first demo they brought in. We did a consignment with them to see how the record would run. And there's the baby right there. That's the first puppy. And it just pretty much, it just went out of the store. There was a great following. Street promotion was heavy. And that's like the most important thing. When you got a good street promotion, you got a good loving kids around that love your music, they're gonna just spread it out so flavorfully, so it's gonna just hit the streets double time. And that's what happened.
Underground filmmaker Chris Recker was a keen follower of the scene at the time, collecting many cassette tapes from the underground circuit in his search for the next great thing.
I remember I got my first tape, I believe, right before the first album came out. It was a promotional tape. You could get them at some of the local record stores, some of the underground record stores, stuff like that.
And these two were the ones that came later, and we were selling at Backside. I didn't even work here at the time. There was a coffee shop across the street me and my friends used to go to. And just the word spread, like I said, on the streets, about the tapes and stuff, because the internet wasn't big then. And we used to come here and check it out, and we used to buy like 4 or 5, give them to our friends, you know what I mean?
It seems amazing to think that these tapes, some of which now change hands for hundreds of dollars amongst System fans, were originally produced to be given away. One of the band's greatest achievements at this time was to limit the amount of cassettes in each run to a couple of hundred, giving the tapes importance amongst, even then, a growing fan base.
I remember Shavo walked in and he was mentioning that they're going to get a verbal interview on K-Rock, and he was excited about that. And when that happened, it just pretty much went from there. And we just got calls after calls about System left and right, if we've been carrying their stuff, and because we just kept selling out over and over again, and they couldn't like reproduce so many tapes because cassettes, there's only so much. But
as soon as I got it, man, there was something about. I was already a fan of not only heavy metal music, hard rock, whatever you want to call it, but other types of music, an all-around type of music person, whatever you want to call it. Well, when I heard System of a Down, there was something different about it from everything else. I'm not sure if it's the style, the rhythmic style of the singing going along with some of the I'm not gonna say goofy, but some of the interesting guitars, just overall it has just a whole hard, heavy punk rock kind of aggression towards the system, towards being suppressed, just kind of an overall word, but it's just said with so much, almost beautiful. It's beautiful music.
Street promotion. If you got a good street team, good-looking approach on that, a good strong vibe. The kids are passing out the flyers, promoting your album, whether it's anything in life, clothing line, whatever. Promotion, street promotion is the #1 thing. One-on-one, flyer handing out. That's the most important thing, and that's what gave him the rundown. That's what gave him the hype.
And it's not a kid doing it to make $3 an hour. It's a kid that saw this band play and was like, man, these guys are good. And they'll just pass out flyers.
Every time I go to a club or something, I would just see flyers or some sort of a handout with their name on it. And their stickers and all that. I remember when Vahe was wearing their beanie and I was just like, what band is that? Before it was all happening. And that's how I get introduced with a lot of good bands through a lot of my friends.
next stage for System was to try to get some record company attention. They knew the only way to achieve this was to play some of the important rock venues in LA. Like many of the big cities in America, LA supports a well-defined stepladder of band venues, from your small bars, church and school halls, right up to the large purpose-built rock venues such as the Roxy, the Whiskey A Go Go, the Troubadour and the latest, Johnny Depp's Viper Room. System of a Down were fortunate to have such historic and well-established venues literally on their doorsteps. Located on Hollywood's Sunset Boulevard, only a mile down the road from their little Armenian upbringing. Unfortunately, it wasn't all good news, for LA's reputation as the home of US rock attracted and still attracts literally thousands of new bands into the city. Owner of the Roxy, Nick Adler, has seen many hundreds of bands come and go and appreciates what it takes for a new group to stand out in this volatile market.
LA is such a hard market because we see so much music, and we're so, I don't know what the word is, we're just spoiled almost with music that when it does turn our head and we do say, oh, forget about what we think is cool and this is cool, you know, then it seems like that band is the next big one to break. But when you go back to, okay, well, we got to start going out there and seeing how we're going to fill Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday with local bands and start going through hundreds and hundreds of demo tapes. And then you get that one band that starts to do well, and then other bands see that. And it started with Korn and Deftones, and then it was System and Snot and Incubus.
The key to getting a gig at one of these venues is to show that you have the ability to draw a big enough crowd. Although these large clubs do support talented bands, at root they are mainly interested in tickets and beer sales. So developing a fan base loyal enough to regularly pay up was the key. This is where System's street promotion really paid off.
May 28th, 1994 was our first show ever, and it was at the Roxy, and we had no demo, nothing. It was really hard to get shows in LA, but I just pumped. Every day, I called like 7-8 times to the same places, and I'm like, hey, it's me again. Just letting you know that we can pack this place. Give us a show. No, you have to have a demo tape. You got to go through this. You got to sell tickets. Blah, blah, blah. And then, so we did all that, and we ruled. After the second time we played, there was no more selling tickets, no more nothing, and we just progressed. We stayed in LA, played everywhere in LA. Anywhere you can name, we played.
There's so many bands here in LA, and they all want to play the clubs, but there's so many clubs, even clubs that aren't even famous, where bands will play. And plus, I know there's nights on Mondays where it's not an open night, but basically you sign up and you can play. And if you can just develop the smallest of following, that's going to be your ammunition to get into the famous small clubs out here.
First time the Roxy had heard of them was in 1995. There was a promoter named Brian Markovich who would rent the Roxy out on Friday and Saturday, Sunday nights, and promote and bring in their own bands and stuff. And I believe their first show was on a Sunday, and they brought in 150 people, and which was, you know, definitely at that time for any kind of local band was, you know, whoa, what's going on here?
Started going to the shows. First one was at the Anti-Club. It was like a little house kind of place. With Snot, they played. Almost died there.
LA-based rock journalist Paul Rogers has spent much time with the band. Although he was not aware of System during this period, he has since interviewed them on numerous occasions and has a vast knowledge of how the nu metal scene developed during the 90s.
System of a Down are a truly LA act. You know, they went to high school here, as you know. Some of them knew each other from high school. So they're total fish out of water in the scene here in that respect. And that certainly helped their early fan base, because the problem a lot of bands here have is that they just don't have that groundswell of just friends and family to come to their early shows. They come out here and they just don't know anybody, and they're asking, you know, industry folks to come along, but they just don't have any friends and fans, whereas System was the opposite. You know, they just left high school when they started the band, so they still had all these buddies which they were able to use as a springboard to start building up the sellout crowds they had down on the Strip very early on.
Eddie Ortel at the time came in, and he was our sound guy, our booker, the guy who answered the phones. He kind of did everything. He was the beginning of the new Roxy, and actually turned out to be the whole nu metal scene, but we didn't realize at that point. And on Tuesday nights, he did a show, a weekly thing called the New HQ. It was all the new talent. It was free if you were over 21, and it was something every week where you could go see the hot new band.
At this time, the Roxy was trying out a new method of getting bands into their club. Such was the scale of the underground rock scene in the mid-90s that the venue started to offer bands pre-sale deals to sort the men out from the boys. This basically involved groups paying out quite a considerable amount of cash up front before the Roxy booked them. Only those bands such as System who were confident enough or foolhardy enough to undertake such a risk would be booked.
People look at the Sunset Strip, or they look at the clubs up here and say, why does the band need a pre-sale? Why do they have to pay money to come play your club? Well, at the same time, those people have to go out and do hand-to-hand combat with people and put a ticket in their hand and shake their hand and say, come to my show. And that's how you really get fans, on this level. You can't just play the Roxy and just think that, you're going to get fans. You have to get them there every time, 3 or 4 times, and then they're fans for life.
Well, one of the most violent ones probably was at the Whiskey about a year after their demo came out. It was with Far and Downset, and it was just chaos. It was just Far played, then System played, and during System it was just, because there was a lot of the Downset fans too that hadn't heard of System. And the Downset fans, if you know Downset, are just ridiculous crazy, so it was just the pit from the stage all the way to the bar, and it was fun.
You hear a decent band in LA, you're most likely going to go see them in LA again. And every time they come around, LA fans are basically what I'm saying is they're pretty straightforward. If they like something, they like something. If they don't, and you're in an LA club and there's a band and the local people don't like it, you're going to know, because people are most likely going to start throwing stuff on stage. You know what I'm saying?
The last tape System recorded began circulating through the metal underground and helped spread their fan base through Southern California, Europe, and even New Zealand. The 3 tracks captured the band's explosive live performance and started to surface amongst the important movers and shakers of the LA rock scene.
And then this is pretty much the last one that they made that got them where they're at right now. It was with No War and People. Quality was better on this one too.
I'm also a producer too, so I know that sound. I know that there's a certain hook or a certain verbal approach that the kids want to hear. And as soon as you hear these demos, anywhere from System and 100 different bands we've been hearing, you just know. And once I heard the demo and just off the approach of the band, you just knew they were going to hit. And they did, and it's just amazing. All the love to them,
With System of a Down, being from Los Angeles, and being Armenian, people that are from LA like to root for bands that are from LA. It's like when your best friend plays minor league baseball, or he went to your high school, you want this guy to make it to the pros. It's kind of like that with bands from LA. They're playing the Roxy, now they're selling it out. I want them to get a record deal.
One of System's early fans was well-respected producer and recording engineer Sylvia Massey. Sylvia was based in LA and had built up a formidable reputation through her work with Tool and Love and Rockets. A well-known face on the local LA metal scene, Sylvia was passionate about music and kept her ear very close to the ground in her search for new talent. In 1997, having followed System of a Down from an early age, it was Sylvia who first persuaded infamous producer and record company owner Rick Rubin to check out the group at the Viper Room.
You could do the room 2 or 3 times and do 300 and 300 and 400, but when you have that big explosive show and you put the 500, 600 people in there, then you are the next band that's going to be on the radio and be on MTV. And
Rubin was amazed at what he saw. Not only the incredible performance of the band and their music, but the fanatical response of the audience. He was witnessing something fresh and exciting, the birth of a new force in metal music. But Rubin wasn't the only music biz professional there that night.
Definitely, right from the jump, it was an Armenian. They knew they could count on their 150 Armenian fans to be there every show, no matter what. So they'd always have, their following. But what would also happen is as soon as System of a Down would go off, the room would empty and the next band wouldn't. None of the fans stayed over for the next band. It was definitely, they were there to see System. They showed up. Right when it was over, they were out of there.
The word spread, and their shows were always sold out. By the second, third show, it was packed, you know. Whether it was all friends or locals, you know, it was always a packed show.
You could not even enter. It's like, it was so overcrowded, and they had their families there, which was all love. That's the best. When you get their parents over there, just loving every moment of it.
By now, System had been generating a considerable buzz in the music industry, and their shows had started to draw a sizable number of music industry executives from many of LA's top record companies. In fact, unbeknown to Rubin at this time, System had already been offered contracts from other companies. But confident from the start of their abilities, System were shrewdly holding out to see what noise they could make. There then followed a very exciting few months for the band. Once the intentions of Rubin had been leaked, many other bigger labels started making offers as the huge buzz surrounding the band grew. Rubin's American Recordings invited the band to sign up, but initially System declined. Rubin continued to hound them relentlessly, showing up at all of their gigs, trying to prove how much of a fan he really was. He even flew over to New York to attend a legendary CMJ convention gig where, farcically, the band were rumoured to have already signed to Cherry Universal Records. Eventually, in September 1997, System of a Down signed to American Records after Rubin had guaranteed to personally produce their first album. System were huge fans of Rubin, who had production credits on many of their favourite albums, from legends such as Slayer and the Red Hot Chili Peppers to the Beastie Boys and Public Enemy, an eclectic and diverse range of genres that swiped broadly through the band members' own personal music influences. An offer to handle the reins of their first album was the icing on the cake, and one that System of a Down could not refuse. During the first months of 1998, System of a Down were holed up with Rubin in LA's famous Sound City studios. Situated in an unremarkable industrial part of North LA, Sound City was a shrewd choice by Rubin for the band's first professional recording sessions. Located within easy reach of the group's Glendale base, the studio's relaxed, down-to-earth vibe worked well for the members, who were required to drain themselves emotionally day after day. Rubin had used the studio many times before and knew Sound City's mix of tried and tested analogue equipment would contribute greatly to the band's organic sound, as it had done for many famous albums tracked there before. Sylvia Massey was an obvious choice to engineer the album, a role she threw herself into with an energy only matched by the band's own. Sylvia and the band dreamt up a bewildering range of recording techniques, particularly for Serge's vocals. These included hanging the singer upside down, recording him in the street, the hall and the toilet. Studio manager Siobhan O'Brien.
Basically, Sylvia Massey had told me about the band before they were signed. They were playing around town and they were actually doing a pretty huge draw. So there was quite a few labels going after them. There was pretty much a bidding war. But she just loved the band. And she was so excited about it. And so she was really campaigning to get the project. And then Rick Rubin came in under the radar and signed him. So after that was when we got the call. They booked the studio to come in and track the first record.
Looking as an outsider who's only chatted with Rick Rubin briefly, his MO always seems to have been that he takes a lot of the pretension out of the bands he works with, and technically speaking he works with a relatively small amount of sound sources, but they're very high quality sound sources. For example, when he came across the Cult, they had already recorded the entire Electric album using like 128 tracks of everything. They weren't happy with it, so he said, okay, let's just go back to basics. And if you've heard the Electric album, you know it almost sounds like a demo tape, you know. And that's always been his MO, and I think that's what he brought to the first System of a Down album. It's very raw, it's very in your face, it's mastered really, really hot, almost painfully hot in places.
The first time I heard System, listening to the demos, there's something completely different, and that's important. And they did it well. And like with Sound City, we have a history of bands breaking on their first records, but all those records, Nirvana, Rage Against the Machine, it's like it was something completely different, which is something the labels don't grasp, unfortunately. That, if you let an artist be true to their music and do what they do, you'd be surprised. But unfortunately, if a band hits, you know, like Blink-182, they'll sign 20 other bands that sound like Blink-182. And I think even with System, because System had a bit of like the Rage Against the Machine vibe going, this is what their interest, but you know, like with Rick Rubin and Sylvia Massey, it was more the Middle Eastern vibe, and also the fact that Serge's lyrics are very, very political.
In terms of his relationship with the band and how he affects their relationships, I think he's very, very important. First off, because I think it's one of the bands he feels the greatest empathy with. I don't want to call it his pet project, but I think he's very, very close to that band, and it's one of the real long-term things in his vision.
Rick is really a music fan, hardcore, which makes him a great producer. And you know, he's not so much on the technical aspect of the actual control room, but he's more a musician and a fan, which it shows in his work. He was excited about System, you know, and you could tell that immediately. He was raring to go, and I think together that they worked well together. You know, they obviously the reason why System went with American, because like I said, there was a bidding war. They probably could have got more money off another label. Was they're huge Rick Rubin fans. They admired his work, you know, that he's done over the years, and I think that's why they made that decision to go with him. And it's worked out well, you know, because not only are they on American, but they get Rick Rubin as a producer, you know, so they were really, it was a good deal for them. And yeah, the work ethics were great. You know, they were always here on time, except for Shavo. Shavo's usually late.
It was kind of a one-stop shopping exercise for the band. They didn't have to please, you know, a whole A&R department and please this and please that and go shopping for producers and worry about the politics at the label. It was all in one guy, and it was one guy who totally believed in them and just basically told them to get on with it. So he brought them an awful lot of freedom, I think, and an awful lot of security, because once they knew he understood them and was on board with them, they were kind of home and dry. That's been a big part of just letting those guys get on with it.
Working day usually started around noon, and we go till, you know, midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. You know, 12, 13 hours a day, 6 days a week, 1 day off. So yeah, it's a lot of work for the musicians to come in. And usually, especially like when they first start, we're doing drums. So then you've got John in there, and that's probably the hardest part for the drummer because it's such a physical job. And they're working long hours. They really are getting killed in there, you know. And then, you know, then we'll lead on to vocals and guitar overdubs eventually. But basic tracks is like the drummer. You know, after Sylvia gets the drum sound and bass and guitars, you know, we'll do scratch vocals at the same time. So the band is playing live to 24. And you basically want to get the best drum tracks, what we call it's the basic tracks or the foundation, which is the bass and drums. Obviously, if you get a great vocal take or a great guitar take, you're just going to go ahead and keep it. But usually you'll go over and overdub those later. So yeah, the first week of tracking, every focus is on the poor drummer. But once he's done, he can hang in the lounge and relax, which they usually do. But yeah, John was great. He was definitely up to the job, you know, and especially System's music, because it's intense, especially for the drummer, you know. But he did a great job, and that you know, and that was before people were wheeling in Pro Tools all the time, you know, which you know, in Pro Tools you can basically chop up the drums, knock stuff into tune, you know, and all that stuff. There was no Pro Tools on the basic tracks on System. They were really focused on the record, which is great, because sometimes you'll get a band in on their first record and they think, oh, you know, they're signed, it's time to have a good time and party. No, that wasn't System at all. They were very focused on what they were doing. Yeah, there is a pressure there. You know, your label is putting a lot of money down for you, and in their case, the head of the label was producing the record, so yeah. They needed guidance. I mean, you know, definitely they knew what direction they were going in and what their music is about, and they weren't going to compromise that at any means. And I don't think Rick would ask them to do that either, because Rick just loved the band as well. But you know, they needed a little bit of guidance, but as far as their musicianship or the chops, yeah, they were definitely up and ready to go.
The release of their first album, the self-titled System of a Down, was hailed as a breakthrough in metal music. Here was a perfectly realised, fully formed piece of metal heritage, refreshingly clear of self-indulgence and totally fat-free.
Kids these days are not into like what's in the middle. They want extreme. Hot tea or cold tea. Linkin Park, System, Korn, Tool, whatever. Hot tea gets you going, it gets you crazy. Who wants to just stand in the middle these days? And I mean, let's be honest, the music gets you going, excited, hyper, camaraderie, fun. With System, brings you some kind of knowledge. We don't agree with it all, some of it we do, but I think that's why it's so popular. And there's something to the songs, with the melody and the yelling, back to melody, the lyrics, the music.
No one had heard anything like it, you know, and that was the whole point, the way it was so stop-start, and we hadn't heard any vocals like that before. But I didn't really register that System of a Down were anything that special in my consciousness until I ran across the video for the song Spiders, which they had on some movie soundtrack. And I thought the quality of the songwriting was so good that I assumed it was a cover version. Not to be disrespectful to System of a Down, who I understand a lot better now, but at the time they were just another kind of new metal band on the periphery of my consciousness, and that really, really shocked me. It shocked me even more when I found out it wasn't a cover version.
Savage lyrics and screeching riffs combined with well-crafted harmonies and melodies. It was great to hear music by a group with no membership of any musical club and no ambition beyond making truthful, heartfelt music. The System of a Down album redefined the landscape of world rock and set a precedent for the new century. Drawing on metal, punk, as well as subtle European and Middle Eastern influences, the sound got under the skin of audiences and fellow musicians alike. Voiced by Serge's distinctive pounding delivery, System of a Down took the listener to new realms of rhythmic, melodic and lyrical chaos. Darren's beefy, occasionally minimalist guitar work set the tone for the band's dense, ultra-heavy sound, ably assisted by John's skull-crushing drums and Chavo's reverberating bass.
There's a range of influences going on here. I mean, they are influenced by... One thing about American musicians as opposed to British musicians is that the whole... For one, Kiss, everyone was influenced by Kiss here. It seems like every musician you meet from like their mid-20s older was hugely influenced by Kiss. And the kind of hair metal thing in general was just huge over here, you know. I mean, Motley Crue were household names here, whereas in England it was always a kind of specific, kind of cliquey thing. So I think they heard their share of that. I know Darren was very fond of a lot of what we'd call the more extreme metal. You know, he listened to a lot of Cannibal Corpse and all that extreme stuff that was coming out of Florida. And you can hear that in some of his playing now, I think. But then the kind of twist on that was I think they were also very impressed, or certainly some of the members, by some of the more free-thinking bands that came along later on, like Faith No More and Jane's Addiction, who weren't so genre-specific, you know, who took things from here and there and made a kind of collage out of it sonically. And then, of course, grunge came along, and again, I think that affected most musicians who were playing guitars, really, in terms of being less pretentious, you know, and more to the point. And I think System of a Down bring a lot of those elements of all those genres to the table.
Throughout the record, the music takes many unexpected turns, starting in full-on metal mode, descending into Middle Eastern rhythms, and hammering out numbing riffs before cranking up for a powerful ending. The band recalled the work of the Dead Kennedys, particularly in their lyrical concerns, which ranged from remote satellite viewing and mind control to conspiracy theories about the USA's attempts at global domination. A fusion of alternative metal and programmed beats, augmented by subtle Eastern European influences, earned them comparisons with contemporary metal bands like the Deftones and Korn. But the sharpest reviewers were quick to pick up on this band's bound corrosive power. Musical qualities that helped shift more than 850,000 copies.
They like to play down the fact that there's any kind of Armenian influence or exotic influence in their music. And that's not for me to say, but the fact is that to my white boy Western ears, a lot of it certainly sounds very exotic. You know, they're certainly using harmonies that rock bands don't use. They're certainly using instrumentation that rock bands don't use. And to me right now with System of a Down, it's kind of a game of two halves. With the heavy passages, it doesn't sound quite so remarkable to me. Some of that's fairly generic. It's the mellow passages they intersperse with them that sound so unique to me, where, like I said, they can really exploit those harmonies, where you can really hear Serge's voice, which is a huge part of why they sound so unusual. And again, where they start using the unusual instrumentation that certainly I haven't heard in a hard rock context before. There's so many different parts of different styles of music in a System of a Down song or CD. I mean, not only do you hear hard guitars, but you'll also hear, you know, some instruments I can't even pronounce. I don't know if it's like a Middle Eastern feel, but it just kind of makes, I love the way Serge chants and kind of like, you know what I'm saying? It's hard, you feel it, but it also kind of touches you, like as being something that other people could appreciate, you know, if they just kind of heard past the hard guitars and stuff like that and kind of walked away from looking at it as a labeled type of music, like all punk music, punk kids, yada yada, when it's actually something that anybody could relate to. I mean, if you look at System of a Down's fan base, it's so widespread and, like I said, diversified. There's so many different types of people. I mean, it's not just 13-year-old kids that go to high school that watch MTV, that buy the CD, then buy the shirt, that keep System of a Down going. No, it's the fans that go to the shows, that sell them out, that, you know, that want to see the band. They want to support the band. They're just not buying a ticket to be cool. It's what you're looking for. I mean, you could be in a bad mood, put it on, you'd be in a good mood. You could be in kind of a cranky mood, you put it on, you'd be in like a pumped mood. You know, I mean, regardless of anything, I think it hits the spot.
The System of a Down album topped critics and readers' polls worldwide and subsequently helped land high-profile touring slots with Slayer and the '98 Ozfest. Playing at these prestigious shows was like a dream come true for System of a Down, who had all worshipped Slayer and Ozzy for as long as they'd been interested in music. Throughout their whole career, much has been made of the band's political views. Although some of Serge's lyrics do deal with serious issues, it would be unfair to label System as a political band. Similar comments have also surfaced about the group's Armenian roots, as if their motive all along has been to carry the flag of Armenian nu metal music. Rock bands, however great, have unfortunately always needed some point of entry for journalists and the media to latch onto. The band themselves are the first to admit that their Armenian heritage serves a useful purpose for this, and that it could be a lot worse.
I think them being Armenian really helped them develop a core following in the beginning, because from what I've learned from talking to the guys, Armenians really stick together, whether you know them or not. So if John, the drummer from System, knows an Armenian kid, they'll tell him, hey, you know, we have this band, we're playing at this club. They'll spread it throughout the Armenian community. And that's what I learned. I think being Armenian only helped them in the beginning, but obviously the music totally speaks for itself. I mean, you don't have to sell, you know, they're unbelievable. But in the very beginning, I think it helped them.
In the beginning, I remember hearing a lot of bad things about them being Armenian and playing this kind of music, because everyone thought it was just the ignorant, more like old school, old-fashioned kind of parents, or even the kids that just listen to either rap or nothing. Everyone thought it was bad and what they're doing doesn't sound right and they're not going to get anywhere. And as soon as they hit the radio, I remember people like appreciating it more and thinking, damn, they are Armenian and they have spread the word for our community, you know, whether it was for the genocide or just the fact that they're Armenian. So
I can paraphrase what the band have told me. Yes, a big deal has been made about them being an Armenian band or an Armenian metal band, which the band literally laugh about. I mean, because what is an Armenian metal, you know? They claim the fact that they're Armenian is purely coincidental, in as much as they're a bunch of high school buddies who formed a band, basically. The fact was, because of where they lived, the majority of kids at their high school were Armenian. They would have had to go out of their way to have non-Armenians in the band, if you know what I mean. So it's like any other kind of organic band that a bunch of young guys form. You form it amongst the people you know and the people who can play. And when they hired John, who was the last guy in, as it were, it wasn't a case of they were advertising, Armenian drummer wanted. It's just, again, they knew of the guy and he lived in the same neighborhood. And
especially interesting because you don't see many bands from Armenian descent. And a lot of people, from my personal reference, I honestly wasn't aware of a lot of Middle Eastern countries and a lot of the smaller countries until I actually listened to some System of a Down, I didn't even know where Armenia was, you know what I'm saying? It's just interesting, that's just another interesting factor. I mean, all the little bits and pieces of System of a Down is what makes it a good band. I mean, not only do you have something that's different, but yet something you can relate to, yet something that kicks ass, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, dude, it's a great medley,
System also having the Armenian, following, they already have that, but then just kids in general are that passionate about their music as well, and they don't even understand the whole conflict that where their music is coming from, but they just want to be down, they want to be down with what System is talking about, and I know they get a lot of kids maybe thinking about things that they would never think about, maybe listening to a Linkin Park or a Papa Roach. System's bringing more of a world political view to it, where it's like, it's not all about me. It's like, hey, let's open up and see kind of what's going on.
One of the reasons why I like System is their political message is not forced down your throat. Some songs are political. The whole record, especially the new one, Toxicity, is not political. Then they have a song Jump, Bounce, Bounce, and they have a song about groupies, but then they talk about issues and they talk about politics, and it's done in a way where it's not, this is what's going on, except in the prison song, maybe, when they talk about jail. That's actually down your throat. But the way it's done, I love it. But personally, why I like them and why I think people like me dig System and are passionate about them, because the message is not forced down your throat. And I don't think the band cares if you disagree with them.
As Shavo said in the interview I did with those guys, they're not complaining. They think that the fact that they're all from that background leaves a lot of things unsaid between them. That only strengthens their bond. It means they don't have to keep spelling out each other's kind of moral stance to each other, because they've all been raised that way. They are forced to discuss it all the time. I don't think it would come up very much if they weren't asked about it. And like I said, they deny any kind of Armenian influence in their music, even though I hear it. But
they want you to pick a side of the fence and build a house. Have an opinion, whatever it is, cool. System says, we have an opinion, here it is. Like it? Okay, cool. I don't care if you like it.
A self-confessed workaholic, Darren began writing songs for the second album while the band was still busy mixing the debut. Most of the tracks were composed in the wee small hours of the morning, often between 4 and 7 o'clock. Darren beavered away all night, and before he knew it, he'd seen the sun rising. Trying to improve upon a debut which reached #1 on the Billboard Heat Seekers chart and shifted more than 850,000 units would take some doing. But the obsessive perfectionist streak in Darren and the rest of the band ensured they were more than up to the task. System hold themselves up in the famous Los Angeles Cello Studios from February 2001 onwards, aided and abetted by a sonic dream team. Rick Rubin produced at cello, while engineer Andy Wallace of Nirvana and Rage Against the Machine fame worked on post-production at the nearby Enterprise Studios. The aim was to reinvent themselves, to be bigger, louder, better, and even more creative than last time. They wanted to stretch themselves by writing lots of material and reaching out in different directions. It was evident that the quality of the tunes were so high that the ones to miss the cut would have to be released as bonus tracks or B-sides for future singles. The album's guest collaboration came courtesy of multi-instrumentalist virtuoso Arto, who'd previously worked with jazz giants such as Wayne Shorter, Chet Baker and Al Di Meola. He laid down vocal as well as instrumental tracks, playing everything from a Coke bottle to a bucket of water.
I went late flight and I was just gonna meet them, you know, say hello, and I never meet them, I don't know who they are, and they were sitting there, especially Darren. He was like, hey, how you doing, you know? Yeah, okay. And then he say, are you ready? I'm like, what, ready? I was supposed to do it tomorrow, you know, the session. But, you know, little drink, little ting, 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 wink, wink, well, my mind open, and then I start doing the session. Then I went in, I put the headphone, and when the sound came, I never feel in my life anything like that. It was like all from here to down. I was like, ah.
Certainly his vocals have an unusual accent, which I think is a part of it. Also, I think the most striking passages are often when he is harmonising with Darren, and they really have that thing down. Until I saw them live, which was relatively recently, I didn't appreciate how well they can put that away live. And another thing which I had misunderstood, and I think a lot of listeners do, is there are passages on the albums which I'd attributed to Serge, which are in fact Darren singing.
What I feel with them, I am young enough to have hope, and I am old enough to survive with them. You know, they make me young to, like, I have hope, you know, like this, it will stay like that because they are really, really wonderful person.
Serge is undoubtedly a very well-educated and well-read man. He has an abiding fascination with US foreign policy and its ramifications, and he's very eloquent about it. When I interviewed the guy, sadly I couldn't use 95% of what he said to me because it would have been like a whole book in itself, and I couldn't, in the space of my article, I couldn't even like go down that road, you know, which was a shame because all the stuff was very, very quotable.
Originally in that session, I did like 2 pieces. I worked with their music, but other than that, I did like 4 or 5 different pieces by myself. Because for me, it's like an instrument is me. This is my instrument. What is the tools? It can be table, it can be water, it can be cooking pot, it can be bottle, it can be whistle, it can, you know, they give me like hope, you know. I feel like I'm young. I end up very young after that session, you know.
I think as a songwriting talent, as a composing talent, the kid is just the real deal. I mean, if you listen to their music and you've read interviews with other bands, you'd expect him to be some kind of bohemian, you know, pretentious artiste living out here in Hollywood. And he's quite the opposite. He doesn't seem to have come from a background where other members of his family were, you know, I mean, they were in artistic pursuits, but they weren't doing the band thing. A talent for composing songs and a drive to do it, which he finds hard to define. It's just something he does. Like most, you know, true artists, he just gets up in the morning and just does it.
Arto and System recorded a number of Armenian incantations that eventually led to the beautiful piece Arto, found at the end of the album as a hidden track.
Darren, he say, why we always have to have funeral like always we down, you know, like. And when he was talking about this thing and then talking about the songs and thing, I say, oh, okay, you know, that's how the last track could become create, you know. Originally, that last track is like really heavy, choir type of song, you know, like really. But in a way, it's very beautiful. How these things develop in those days in Anatolia, you know, no electric, no entertainment, no nothing, you know, all the church was important because people coming together, singing and talking, you know. We wanted to give a little fresher approach for our believings, you know. That's the way we create that last track. Like when they give me all this open opportunity, I was like, in a way, like, I said, whoa, what is this? Like, it's my album? And then, long time I didn't feel like that, you know, like, even my own album, when I go, I'm not that free, you know. They were seeing something. So that's what I like them very much, because they were so smart. They say, this guy put it out what he had and see what is matching for our picture. Which is just like, I think it's very modern way of approaching how to get it out. First couple of hours, we were like, yeah, let's do music. Yeah, okay, you want to do this? Just whatever you want. Just 4 o'clock morning. I say, man, 4 o'clock morning, how are you going to find? No problem, we'll be fine. I say, okay. Then I understand what opportunity I have.
As Rick Rubin said in the interview he gave with me, Darren does have a very unusual sense of melody and a very high level of musicality amongst people who make heavy music. And Rubin made an interesting comparison with Queen. Not that System of a Down sound anything like Queen, but in terms of, Queen were a band in their time who were unusual, had an unusual sense of musicality amongst heavy bands if you look at their contemporaries. And that's where Rubin puts Darren's songwriting today. And I can see that, or I certainly think that's where it's headed.
It's beautiful, because I don't look at the music as a category or as a style. I only look at the music as a one thing, But I really care about what is behind, what is the message. Is it positive, negative, or hate, all those things.
Toxicity was released in August 2001. Impressive as their debut album was, Toxicity actually makes their earlier release sound drab, one-dimensional and nondescript in comparison. Still rich with trademark quirks, fits and flagrant disregard for convention, the album nonetheless finds the group exploring melody, albeit in relentlessly heavy fashion. Toxicity became a massive hit throughout the entire world, shifting millions of copies in the process and catapulting the band to the top of album charts throughout many countries. Toxicity was also #1 in the American Billboard charts during the traumatic events of September the 11th. Many people actually mistook the band's messages in songs such as Jet Pilot as prophecy, an idea rigorously denied by the group themselves. On its release, System immediately started a huge worldwide tour where they continued to relentlessly promote their groundbreaking album for the world to discover. Shavo from the band explains what it's like.
There's pros and cons, but I enjoy it. I'm a road dog. I love the road life. After the first 3 months, I was like, I ain't going back. But then I go back, and then I get into home life, and I like home. And then they send us out again. The first 2 days, kind of hard adjusting, and then all of a sudden, I'm back becoming a road dog, and I'm just like crazy on the road. It's like two different personalities, I guess. It's like road life, home life, different, I can't guzzle down a bottle of Jack Daniels at home, but I could on the road. When I go home, I become a pig.
As a big thank you to all their fans for supporting Toxicity, System and radio station K-Rock organised a free outside concert in Hollywood, close to the band's Armenian home. This generous gesture marking Labour Day 2001 was promoted heavily by K-Rock and led to huge legions of fans turning up on the day. Underground filmmaker Chris Recker was part of the enormous crowd who gathered expectantly around the streets off Sunset Boulevard that day.
Yada yada, we got a free show going on in K-Rock, so what do? Everybody heads down there on the day that it was supposed to be said on the radio. A lot of people showed up. I mean, we're in the middle of Hollywood. When I walked up, there was at least 400 to 500 people piling into the streets, off the sidewalks. You had LAPD telling people, obviously getting frustrated with the situation, they had no idea that System of a Down would turn out a crowd like this.
But basically, as you know, the whole thing was massively oversubscribed. They expected 3,000 fans and an estimated 10,000 showed up.
So, I mean, the LAPD started getting frustrated when they actually announced that they weren't going to be letting more people into the show because they've already exceeded the amount of people. you know, they blocked off the whole block and were only allowing people in that had wristbands, that were passed out earlier, stuff that wasn't mentioned before. You had people jumping over fences, cutting through people's apartments to try to sneak into this free show that the LAPD wasn't letting people into.
Hey, look at that shit, man! Everybody and their mom's going in, man! How'd all those people?
Obviously, System have a real hardcore fan base, and some of these kids had travelled and they'd been there all day and it was a hot day. No announcement was made, apparently. This seemed to be the big problem, that the fire marshal said, okay, this is not going to happen, but they didn't get up and tell anybody.
Chris and his friends eventually broke into the concert, where they waited for the band to come on.
It just seemed like, you know, where's the band? You know, a half hour goes by, 40 minutes, people standing there in front of the stage chanting. I mean, I would think this would pull them out. Slowly but surely, I mean, stuff started just coming off the stage and people started realizing, you know what? I don't think this free show is going to happen.
A roadie got up and just started removing one of these banners, and that's when the kids figured out this thing wasn't going to happen.
They weren't stupid. People started getting upset. They started blaming basically the police, the promoters. They basically didn't give a shit anymore. System of a Down wasn't on the stage, so they were going to throw shit at the stage. A couple security guards had to drag the one guy off the stage that was fighting with one of the other security guards. As soon as they got him off stage, more stuff started flying on the stage. Batteries, beer bottles. They weren't even selling alcohol at the show, and there were so many damn beer bottles flying, piled up. Monitors started being ripped down off the stage. You had monitors just landing into crowds of people. Then you had the people starting to take the monitors and run off with, you know, 3 people carrying a monitor back to their car or wherever they tried to take it.
And then there was just more and more kids coming in the opposite direction to me. And this was Labor Day, which is like a bank holiday here. So in like the back streets of Hollywood, you know, it should have been really quiet. So and then simultaneously as I twigged, oh, that was the day they were going to have this free concert, then the police charged from 4 directions onto the intersection where it was really going down, and there was, for like 5 minutes, it was a full-on riot. The tear gas, and I heard they used rubber bullets. I didn't see that with my own eyes. So my van was stuck. Me and another car were just stuck. We had the police behind us, the kids in front of us. There was all kinds of missiles coming from the kids that were hitting our vehicles, and the police were firing tear gas from behind us.
Next thing you know, from the top of the street, from where one of the barricades was, you have a whole group of police officers and riot gear on horses, knocking people out of the way. They were just pushing in a line. Everybody that was in their way was getting pushed with the baton or pushed by the, you know, trying not to get trampled by a horse.
Almost comically, I was listening to System of a Down at the time because I was currently reviewing the album, so I had the advanced disc in my car, which I hoped might offer me some semblance of protection. But anyway, in the end, I just abandoned the vehicle.
All of a sudden, you know, you just have a stream of people running because, I mean, the cops came in full force. So it was almost like a stampede. News van drove by. They're lucky if they didn't get their window busted or something thrown at a cameraman. Or
it was a mess. I mean, it's a really stupid thing to have a riot over. You know, it's a rock concert. It's trivia.
It was a good idea that just went terribly wrong, terribly bad. Somewhere in the planning there was a flaw.
Really laced with irony in terms of System of a Down's lyrics and you know, their whole approach. But
System of a Down obviously likes to do free concerts every once in a while. They like to look out for their fans. But yeah, it was just a hell of a day.
You know, a lot of bands, I get press releases every day from bands who are trying to make out that they're so crazy, that these crazy things happen on the road and they're so out of control, none of which are true. They're all grossly exaggerated. And then this was one of those rare incidents where it really was out of hand, and I really expected System's people to milk it. Because basically the whole thing was all about how popular they were, you know, and it made all the news around here, as you can imagine. It was on all the TV stations. So I waited for my inbox to fill up with press releases, and it just didn't happen. They never did anything with it, and good for them, because they really could have milked it, and nothing was. I never heard one thing about it from the System camp at all. So,
The next day, an article written by Serge entitled Circle of Fear appeared on the band's official website. Serge explained how System were desperate to play, but were prevented from doing so by the LAPD and fire departments. They blamed the authorities' lack of communication with the crowd and subsequent police intimidation for sparking things off. What was supposed to be a day of celebration ended in fear. System of a Down are a 21st century rock group with key differences from their contemporaries. They operate as a self-contained unit, write electrically charged songs about politics, loss, anger and pain, and constantly strive to push themselves artistically. In a media-literate, corporate-savvy age, where even the most credible acts are afraid to change, System of a Down constantly surprise and experiment with their art.
The whole band is now kind of less kind of eager to please. They're doing their own thing more. And you can see that in his live presentation. I mean, now the guy's just showing up in sweats and a t-shirt. I mean, he's the most unlikely frontman in a most image-conscious genre. And it's a beautiful thing.
They want to talk about rock music. They want to talk about the different bands. They always want to know, like the new hot bands. They definitely stay on top of that.
You know, to giving me this type of opportunity, this much respect, and then no matter how much I was tired, I say, whoa, this is it. This is the real thing.
They're different. Their sound was so different. Like, I couldn't compare it to anything at the time. If anything, it sounded like old punk, you know what I mean? Like 10, 15-year-old punk with some metal hooks and just violence. It was just bad, so I liked it. It was like hearing Slayer for the first time. I thought it was illegal. You know, I shouldn't be doing this.
The more time I spend with a band like System of a Down or a band like Tool, they are succeeding because of just timeless, just human qualities, just of respecting each other and supporting each other and understanding each other, so that in the rehearsal room, everyone feels free to pour out whatever ideas they've got, because they don't get criticised, they don't get laughed at, you know, that everyone supports those ideas and will develop them to the fullest.
I've had System of a Down come in the studio here with me a few times. Normally it's just two of the guys that come in. John, the drummer, is the #1 talker of the band. And normally drummers in bands aren't the guys doing the interviews, but I mean, he really has a fantastic personality and he's not afraid to show it, and I really like him. So I've had John in, I've had Shavo come in as well, and just fantastic guys, fun guys. We have a fun time on the radio. We'll screw around, but then when it's time to get serious, they're really wise, smart, intelligent guys.
Keen to distance themselves from a mass production pop world, System pay little attention to what's happening in the wider world of music. They do their own thing and concentrate on improving and honing their art. They started playing music to have fun and will continue together while that is still part of the equation. This remarkable group of musicians seem set to continue tearing down the boundaries, inventing new hybrid forms and irrevocably changing the rock landscape for many years to come.
Why I support them? Because they're not lying. They're not taking advantage from the people's enjoyment, you know?
They're the best bunch of guys that could be doing this, you know. They don't have a big head, they're very level-headed. They're still, will walk down the street on Sunset Boulevard and talk to all their fans.
Their overall angle is that they just, they fear ignorance, and they just encourage the listener just to pay attention and to try and inform his or herself. Because when you're ignorant, you can be misled, and when you're well informed, you're less likely to be misled.
Bands like, you know, System of a Down and Rage Against the Machine and other artists who open our minds up to what's going on within the outsider world, it's important.
All the guys stress they are not advocating a particular political party or a particular social climate. They're just asking that people think.
Show.